In daylight, a group of civilians are trapped in a collapsed tunnel and only Sylvester Stallone can squeeze his way in and lead them to safety. This one's a little closer in premise to the 70s era of disaster movies, but it certainly brings the silly. Here we go. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I was born 6 months premature. My own mother couldn't keep me in.
Do you know, that line stuck out to me when I was watching the movie, and I thought, I bet he's going to take that.
It's because it's one of the few lines where it doesn't feel like it's just a bunch of screaming. It's like an actual written line. Welcome
everyone, this is a movie podcast. We get together, we talk about a movie. We work through franchises, we work through seasons of different types of movie, and right now we're working through 90s disaster movies, building up, of course, to Twister, which will then lead into the sequel to Twister, Twisters, following the Alien to Aliens mold of, let's just add some plural, and it'll be all nice. But
I can't wait for Twister Cubed. That's going to be great.
But today we're looking at Daylight, a 1996 movie. Sylvester Stallone being the star, Rob Cohen being the director. Rob Cohen's not a director that I'm particularly fond of because he went on to do The Fast and the Furious, amongst some other just...
that explains a lot, actually.
Just a bunch of dull crap, mostly. I did see this back in the day, although as I was watching it today, it did occur to me that, like, unlike Dante's Peak and Volcano, which I think I remembered very well, like, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of little things that came up, but I did remember what the plot was from start to finish. I would say the entire first half hour of this movie, I couldn't remember a lick of it. Like, as I was watching it and they were introducing all the characters, I'm like, yeah, I don't remember any of this. I did not remember, I mean, I won't spoil it, but the cause of the disaster, I did not remember any of that. So that's something
we'll
get.
It's so strange to me that you wouldn't remember that because it's the most outlandish thing in the whole movie. How this happened.
I know. We'll get into that in course of the spoilers. Speaking of spoilers, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. And just before we get started with the conversation proper, I'll just say if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And you can get bonus shows from me and David every month on Patreon, but I'll tell you more about those at the end. So Daylight is a simple story of the tunnel. I'm sure it's got a name, but it goes between New York and New Jersey.
It's the Hudson River Tunnel.
The Hudson River Tunnel.
Name.
Yeah. Is it not? Okay. I've heard people say they're taking the Hudson. I've heard that.
Yeah.
That's a phrase people say. And there's two of them. There's a north and a south tunnel.
I mean, it's all one tunnel, but yeah, it's just the different directions. There's one that's going one direction, one that's going the other.
I see. That makes sense. So there's an explosion. Again, the exact nature of the explosion we'll save for spoilers because there's some fun to be had there. But there's an explosion which basically caves in the tunnel, and Sylvester Stallone is just the one man whose EMT badge has been taken away, so he's going to solve the case and go in to save the civilians that are in there, and that's it. He helps them survive, and there's obviously lots of little things across the way. There's explosions, there's flooding, there's all sorts of shenanigans that goes on, but that is the basic gist of Daylight. Called Daylight, of course, because it's about getting out to see daylight once again.
See, you say that, and like there's one line that justifies it, but I feel like Daylight is, out of this season, just looking ahead at what we got and what we've already done, this is the least justified title out of all of them. It has like, this whole thing takes place at night, the whole way through. There's no such thing as daylight.
It's about getting to the daylight. It's just the goal. That makes sense to me.
I get it, but then you may as well just call the movie Safety.
David, have you seen Gravity? There wasn't a lot of gravity in Gravity.
Oh, we're not doing Gravity on the season. Yeah, I would critique that as well.
Well, you shouldn't, because I'll stand up for that one. I will fight you on that one.
I mean, in fairness, at least the lack of it is what's being played with. It's not like this movie plays with the lack of daylight. It's just a tunnel.
Anyway, yes, so that's it's a tunnel disaster movie, which is a very specific sounding subgenre when I say it out loud like that, but you know what I mean. All right, David. Well, first of all, have you seen this before?
I had not.
No.
Don't really have anything more to add on that. It's just never one that's come before me at all.
Once again, we're doing a mid-90s Universal movie. This is the same studio that brought you Dante's Peak. I had that same little nostalgia bolt as I saw that mid-90s Universal logo come round horizontally. I love it. Yep. So I'll get into the insane cast in a minute because there's so many faces in this that are recognizable on that white list. But before we get to that, just the general thoughts. David, what did you think of Daylight?
I feel like there's many aspects that I did enjoy to it, but I can't help but feeling as my overall mood coming out of it is, well, that was underwhelming. Like, as much as I there were so many moments where, like, they played these big action swell pieces and, like, they made a big deal out of stuff. By the time that we got to the end, I couldn't help but feel like, all right, well, they did it. Like, I don't know, nothing in it really left an impact on me. It didn't give me the same sort of, like, big sort of, oh, this is, like, this massive thing that's got all these ramifications and all this stuff that the volcano movies that we did. This is, again, just a tunnel goes down and they have to survive. And I know that's smaller scale, just even in concept, but it didn't feel any bigger than something like what we did in the 70s disaster seasons, which, with all of the added special effects and all the added stuff that we have nowadays, I feel like it still should have to some extent. I don't know. I'll get my thoughts out more succinctly when I'm able to spoil stuff, but it just didn't feel like it was as big as I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, but nowadays, of course, you mean the 90s, not.
Yes.
Because things have moved on a bit again since
I'm
then.
still living in 97, bro.
I mean, to be fair, they do make a big spectacle out of the initial disaster. There's a lot of big, effects for that. But yeah, this is like, I remembered liking it well enough. I'm sure I saw this as a kid because it had Stallone in it, and I like Stallone movies, and that was pretty much it. I kind of like some of the silliness at points. I like some of the practical situations they find themselves in. I found myself chuckling at a few moments. But I think I agree in the sense that some of the big sort of emotional moments they try to have, some land better than others, but the ones that do land, it feel like they're kind of deflated quite quickly after, because they'll, like, just to give a hypothetical here, character A has a big thing where they need to be saved, and it's a kind of a big deal that they managed to do it, but then 5 minutes later, they go anyway in a very underwhelming fashion, and it kind of feels like, oh, well, never mind then. I guess that earlier... there's kind of a weird progression to it in some ways, I will say. From a pacing point of view as well, it's interesting. It's one of those movies where, kind of like Dante's Peak, I guess, where I looked at the time when it was actually not so much the explosion happened, but it was time to stand in Stallone. I'm like, oh, it's 45 minutes in of 2 hours. We're actually nearly halfway.
Yeah.
In my memory, and this is maybe where I was mixing up kind of like my memory of that first half hour, I was thinking he's in there. Like, I was thinking we set everything up and he was in there by the 20-minute mark. And, here we are at the 45 minutes and he's only just going in. So, yeah, I don't know, mixed feelings, I guess. There's definitely some weird nostalgia to it, if for no other reason, because there's so many goddamn faces in this that I recognize, some of which I would have known at the time, and some of which, and this is the weird thing, is that there's at least three people in this that I only know now because they've been in TV shows and like much more recent things. So
okay,
I'll do the cast rundown in a second, but
that's fair. I'm looking over it real quick. I'm not seeing anybody jumping out at me, but I'm sure if you say someone,
it's okay. I mean, I think ultimately I would say it's okay. It's just like, kind of like Dante's Peak to an extent. I find it to be kind of an easy watch, although I would say that it feels just a little less spectacular.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me in this movie, in terms of what I have issue with, is that it never feels like there's any progression. It feels like we're just putting out fires the whole way through, and we're just, trying our best to get through whatever the current thing is. And that's fine. You can have a movie that does that. But all of the characters are talking about it in a progression sense. They're all talking about, how do we get out of here? Let's find an escape. Let's do this. Let's do that. But then the movie doesn't actually do that for an extended period of time. Most all of the second and third acts before finally they say, okay, right, we do actually have to escape at some point. And then they just feel like they kind of rush through it a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I think maybe better setting up. This is kind of like when I talk about rules in a movie, in a science fiction movie or a supernatural movie, and I'll say you really want to set up the obstacles, you want to set up the end goal, like where, like, there's definitely a few things in this movie where it feels like all of a sudden there's a magic fix to something or a magic way to go that didn't feel like it was properly established, or it just feels like out of nowhere. Like the very final thing that happens in this movie, I felt was just this magic solution to something that I'm like, okay, then, okay, this will work, I guess. So why didn't we bring this up before? Why wasn't that? You know, there's a few too many things like that make it feel a little bit unsatisfying as a script, I would say. The script feels lacking. And like I said, I don't think Rob Cohen's a particularly good director. I think the other movies I've seen from him, I just flat out dislike. This is probably his best movie, which is, you know, take that as you will.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's what's the current rating? Just under 6 out of 10 on IMDb. That's not great.
Well, I'm sure Fast and the Furious is rated higher, but I would say it's worse than this. But that's
fair. Yeah, I'm sure you're also a huge fan of Dragonheart as well.
Oh, I've never seen that one. That's
just right up your alley. High fantasy and dragons and stuff.
Nah, not for me. Thank you very much. So, yeah, the cast is pretty insane, and again, it's a lot of like actors who have been on TV shows in the last like decade that I was really noticing. Plus, some people from the era. So, just to go down the cast, so obviously you've got Stallone as Kit Latura, which is a hell of a name, actually. Kit Latura. You've got Amy Brenneman as Madeline, and she is like a playwright who's down on her luck and wants to leave the city, right? She wants to just move away from New York. She's had enough failing. She's got cockroaches in her apartment. And that's kind of her character. She's run down. She wants to leave. I know her from The Leftovers. So I think she's been in other things as well, but that's the main thing I know her from. So I was, oh shit, it's her 20 years before that show. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, a bigger name here is Viggo Mortensen, who plays like a rich, like extreme sports dude.
Man, his character showed up in this movie, and like, mind you, this movie plays it where we get like one scene with each of the characters we're going to be spending time with, just to give us a basic story of who are they and why are they heading to the Hudson River Tunnel. Like, that's more or less what it is. So this guy shows up and he's talking about running like Super Bowl commercials for his brand of like outdoor gear or something like that. And I'm like, who is this supposed to relate to? Who are we going for with this character?
Well, I think there's something they're going for with him, but I'll save it for spoilers. There is definitely something they're going for, though. Yeah. You know, if you're shaved, you might have a bit of a Viggo Mortensen kind of... like, I'm not saying I'd mistake you for him, but if I was to describe the type of person you and Viggo Mortensen are, I'd put you both in the same category.
You know what? I'll take that as a compliment and not dig any deeper. I'm good with that.
I don't think he looks bad. This is not. No, that's fine. It's not a critique. I'm just saying that I'd put you in the same genre of slightly skinny white guy.
Okay, all right. See, here's the thing. I'm not used to any even neutral to positive compliments coming from you, so I expect you to say like, "Yeah, Viggo Mortensen, you know, an asshole."
I'm just saying, okay. I guess it's just the hair more than anything.
That's fair.
You know, hair. You know. Skinny white guy. There you go. That's it. That's the end of the similarities. But just
hey, I'll take it. Viggo's hot.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, they should recreate the Eastern Promises scene where he's fighting in the butt ass nude.
Absolutely.
Put it out on your OnlyFans.
You give me the money. Give me the money. I'll do it.
Call your OnlyFans not quite Viggo.
I'd have to get the accent, like the voice down. I don't have that.
Anyway, so yeah, we got him. I'll come back and talk about who Kit Latura is. By the way, I'm saving him for last because he's the main character. We have Dan Hedaya, who plays like the second in command of like the fire and emergency services. You might know him as Carla's husband from Cheers. Although for movie world, you'll maybe remember him from Alien Resurrection. Funnily enough, he was in that.
Okay, yeah. No, I get him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He also popped up in an Ellen Cohen brothers movie, Blood Simple, I want to say. He's in that as well. He's a major character in that. So he was a
character in Commando as well. I've watched that pretty recently.
Oh, he was. Do you know what? I forgot he was a character in Commando. That's a very good pull. Yeah, he is. Yeah. So he's been around in this time period. You got J.O. Sanders, who plays the father of a sort of family unit that are in the movie. I've been watching Person of Interest for review, and he's in that. Okay. But he's also in other stuff. Actually, I scrolled down his list to see if he was anything else back in the day, because he's got one of those faces that just looks familiar. He played Carl Ferris in the Green Lantern movie. Not Carol Ferris, Carl Ferris.
I'll be honest, I still haven't watched the Green Lantern movie.
I mean, I don't remember. Is her dad's name Carl in the comics?
I don't think
is that
it
a thing?
Is. No. That sounds too quirky to me. I think they just didn't know his name, and they were just like, yeah, it's Carl and Carol, whatever.
Yeah. And for the record, in my accent, like, I really have to emphasize Carl so it doesn't sound like Carol, because it sounds really close, right? But anyway, so you got that, and then his wife, who I don't recognize her. Their daughter, though, I do recognize. Danielle Harris was the little kid from Halloween 4. She's the Jamie's an orphan. She's Jamie, the orphan from Halloween 4. And notably, she is suitably aged to play a teenager. I mean, she's older than 14, which was what they say she is. But it's more suitable here because she's still playing a high schooler in the Halloween remake, which came out in 2007, over a decade after this.
No.
Yeah.
No.
That was one of those things where I saw her in that movie. I went, okay, I get that you want to put her in here because she was in Halloween 4 and people like her, but she's like 31 or 2 or something like that here. Like, you're not convincing anyone, but, whatever. She's still a teenager when she was filming this, I think.
Gotcha.
At least close enough that I wasn't questioning it. So, yeah, recognize her. All right, so that's that. On top of that, well, I didn't recognize him, but one of the prisoners is Sage Stallone, so I'll just point that out since I'm going down the list.
A little bit of internal casting there, I'm sure.
The current chief of the emergency services, the guy who's taken Stallone's job from his backstory, is Mark Ralston, who's in Aliens. So, there, alien connection there. So you got that, and then we're really good down the list here, but obviously Stallone starts the movie as a cab driver. One of his passengers, the woman, was on both Mr. Robot and Timeless from NBC. So, like, even down to a minor character like that, I was spotting actors that I've seen in TV shows in the last, 5 or so years. So,
all right.
Impressive, who's who of, who will someday be someone recognizable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell of a cast.
Mean, like I said, you point them out and I recognize them, but they're definitely not the type of people that, if you said the name Dan Hedaya or whatever, I'd be like, oh, of course, famed actor Dan Hedaya.
No, but it's just sort of his voice as well, his face and voice are very recognizable. Otherwise, obviously, there's other characters as well. There's a whole 4 or 5 prisoner characters. There's an older couple with a dog. They're prominent characters. There's also cop. I guess he's kind of a cop. He's he's specifically a tunnel cop, though. He's like the guy at the booth, checking for people down here if they're, have trouble or whatever. He's a major character as well, and he's got kind of a relationship with one of the women who works at the control center for all this stuff. So she's kind of a character. There's a lot of characters, right? It's a disaster movie. There's a lot of characters who aren't super developed, but some of them have enough to have something by the end.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to, it's very much an ensemble film with Kit being the main character, but I would say if you had to give a second one, it's going to be Madeline, the playwright girl. I think she's pretty much the second lead here. Yeah.
And then after that, I would say there's 3 or 4 that are all pretty even. I'd say the dad from the family,
I'd say the mom from the family too.
Yeah, the mom from the family too, yeah. There's a core B group as well, for sure.
Yeah.
So anywho, that's kind of the rundown of the characters, except from Kit himself, who I kind of left because they reveal it later on, the details, but even at the start, it's very clear that once everything happens, he starts jumping into action. He's got opinions about what to do. It's okay, you're a cab driver, but you weren't always a cab driver, clearly.
Right.
And then we find out quite quickly that he used to have the job that was in charge of all this, but he got unceremoniously axed for some reason. I won't spoil what it is here, but that's something the movie gets into. But ultimately, he's in a position where he knows this tunnel well, and because of that, he's the perfect person to go in and try and save the day. So That's your setup of the movie. As for why the explosion happens, we'll do that in spoilers because it's wild.
So if we're sticking on cast for just a minute here, the
Sure.
one thing that I found super different / interesting about this compared to a lot of the other disaster movies is so far the other ones that we've done have immediately leapt into the idea of, oh, this bad thing has happened and all of the people here band together and we will overcome because humanity, we do this thing. And this movie does not shy back from the fact of, no, if something like this happens, people are going to freak the hell out and try like they will immediately turn on each other if they think it's going to help their odds of survival. And I like that we spent pretty much half to 2/3 of the movie playing with that and having these like in-group, out-group dynamics that everyone wants the same thing, but they are arguing about how to get it done.
Yeah, it's almost weird to compliment it too much because I wouldn't say it's the best script in the world in general, but you're right. It does kind of play with the idea that they're going to fight. They're not going to agree. Some of them are just going to start thinking they're going to die and have to be convinced. And it does have the sort of the more uplifting moments of like we're going to band together and do something. It does have those moments, but if anything, what lets it down is just the lack of, like you say, progression. Not just in the progression of like solving the problems, but progression in the sense of sometimes when they have an uplifting moment, it doesn't feel like when it gets undone later that it's meant to be a big dramatic, oh no, like this is more tragic because we cared about it earlier. It feels like the script's just doing things that, not random, but I don't know, just without the deft hand that I feel like you'd want in terms of making these decisions.
Yeah, without spoiling anything, because we'll get to it, I think the absolute pinnacle of that is the old couple's plot. Because it just feels like they were just rolling dice every time that a character spoke as to like, how is this going to turn out? Oop, nat one, not going to turn out well.
So, yeah. And there's absolutely some silly stuff in this. It doesn't keep up the whole movie, sadly, but there is definitely a few things that, like I say, the origin of the explosion's hilarious. There is a couple of really silly standalone moments that I liked and set me up for like having a blast. And then the rest of the movie was just kind of like, oh no, it's just whatever. But, you know, so I guess that's the problem. And it's probably why I'll ultimately maybe rank it below both volcano movies we've done, is that pretty much it just... And Dante's Peak kind of had this problem as well, but I think that was better overall, is that it doesn't lead into the silliness consistently enough for me to really be on board with the whole movie.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like if you weren't going to lean to the silliness as much, I think the big thing they had to lean into more was the claustrophobia angle. Like really play up the idea of how trapped they are. They have, I would say, a good like quarter mile of tunnel that they're trapped in. It doesn't feel like they're trapped. They're all moving around very freely here. I think it needed to be a lot tighter and a lot closer together in order to really sell that panic better. More
climbing through small crevices and like, you know, people getting scared that they're going to get crushed and things like that. But at that point, you're almost making a horror movie, like almost, you know, which isn't a bad thing, but I'm just, you know, it's a very different direction to take it in. So, all right. Anything you want to add before we get into spoilers?
Not really. I did at the beginning of the movie take note of the score. I thought that they had some really good, like swelling trumpets and, you know, the inspirational theme sort of thing. But by the time the movie ended, it just blended into the background. Nothing was really standing out for me.
Yeah, I can't say I noticed the score all that much in this one. And it's something I usually like to notice if there's anything, you know, going on in there. But I just kind of faded into the background as well, like you said.
Yep.
So, all right, spoilers for Daylight. You have been warned. Okay. Toxic waste. We're going to talk about toxic waste.
Yes, New Jersey.
The movie opens with... it opens with a bunch of things, really, but I'm going to focus on trucks with barrels of... I'm sure they say toxic waste, but they do make it clear. One guy says, you want all this to go up. So they're saying it's combustible, right? That's important. Yes. Because I wouldn't assume that toxic waste by default is combustible, but this is.
I specifically Googled that. I was like, is toxic waste explosive? And essentially Google came down saying the term toxic waste can either mean hazardous for the environment or hazardous to people, meaning also explosive. So technically they're right, but I would use hazardous waste instead of toxic.
Sure. I mean, it's a minor thing, but it did make me go, okay, but I'm glad they at least had a character say they're scared of it exploding, because at least, okay, you've at least established, even if you're wrong with your terminology, you've established what you're setting up to the audience, so that's fine.
Right.
I'm like, okay, fair enough, all right, so you got like 3 trucks full of this stuff. They're basically doing Wages of Fear, going through the tunnel with these barrels.
I mean, you're right, but it's also like zero tension. It's just an average day for them.
Yeah, it's just an average day. It's only a problem if someone actually... Well, I said, though, they do get quite scared when one guy knocks a barrel over, and if it's that temperamental, I'd be like, yeah, why are you doing this through a tunnel where it's full of other cars and civilians and stuff?
Yeah, maybe it's worth taking the scenic route. Maybe just, stay above ground for a while. In fact, I every once in a while I go out and visit some family out in Pittsburgh, and there are like 3 or 4 tunnels I have to pass through, and they all explicitly have tons of signage beforehand saying like, no hazardous materials beyond this point. Like, you must take this off ramp and such like that. So I'd imagine that this was highly illegal in multiple ways, not just transporting toxic waste to Jersey.
Actually, to be fair, the characters at the start, I forgot about this until you just pointed that out, that this is like, you could argue this is a plot hole, they wouldn't let them in there with that. But the character does say to the other ones, like, hey, don't worry, I've got it sorted. The guy at the gate, like, I know him. He's going to, like, they sort of imply that he's made a deal with someone and it is shady. It's not something they're supposed to be doing because the guy's nervous about it. So I'm like, okay, all right. Because they also kind of imply that this waste, like, they're disposing of it in an illegal manner. This is not like what they're supposed to be doing. So fair enough, they do establish that it's not supposed to be in there. This is cause number 1, is that this is here, right? Yes. Cause number 2, and this is, so apparently there's still some punks from the 80s in New York City in the universe that Daylight takes place, because there's these 3 punks that have got, like, one's got like a mohawk, I think, some have got face paint on or whatever. But they jump a man who's got into his car, a presumably rich gentleman that I didn't even notice his briefcase was handcuffed to his hand. Maybe we weren't supposed to notice that until, they pull out the bolt cutters.
Cut the chain, right? Yeah.
And they're like, wait, is this the nuclear football? What's happening right now? What's going on in this movie? It's not. It's actually a suitcase we find out while they're speeding around. It's got diamonds in it. And, like, not like shady. This is not like... I don't think this guy was a criminal, because they were kind of presented in a very neat manner. It kind of felt like, no, this guy's in this industry, and this is just how you transport them for safety. But obviously...
They had a in-car printer that printed out a note for the thieves of the car saying, like, pull over now, you're being tracked, this is illegal. Yeah, and I have never seen that in a car in my entire life, and I'm in 2024, so the fact that they had this in 1996 is, I mean, it's just a printer, so I believe it can happen, but, like, it's wild. Can you imagine taking your car into the shop and saying, I'm having printer issues? I feel like I don't want that level of stress in my life.
That said, though, we all have touchscreens and computers in cars now, so it's not like, it's not that far-fetched in a weird way. So, that said, though, I feel like in real life, you'd still probably pay, like, an armored truck to transport these diamonds rather than just a guy with a handcuffed briefcase, but, whatever.
Apparently, literally every character in this movie is just trying to cut costs.
That is true. They're all trying to cut costs. And, so these punks jump him, take the briefcase, they take off in his car. A cop car tries to chase them, but they realize they can turn into where the tunnel is, and they're like, screw it, let's go in here. So the cops get out and like, phone the Jersey side, these criminals are going down the tunnel. And it's not like the cops are chasing them in the tunnel and that makes them drive recklessly. These punks just drive recklessly anyway. They just want to get past everyone, so they're swerving around everyone, and there's like angry New Yorkers giving them the finger, like, screw you, asshole, and all sorts.
Which to me, that's super realistic to me, is, you got like an angry driver, he's swerving around, and some people just don't let them by, especially in a tunnel. Like, that makes total sense to me.
I'm not questioning the other drivers here. I'm questioning these punks. Surely the smartest thing to do would be to drive unconspicuously. Would that not be the smartest and also safest thing to do?
I will say, to an extent, yes, if it weren't for the fact that they got that printout that was specifically saying that
We're
like this
tracking your
car is
car.
being tracked. So like they need to ditch the car
What,
quick.
what did they call it? This because they didn't say, "Oh, you've been tracked by like GPS."
It was like electro guard or something.
Yeah, it was something specific.
Some random ass, but you get the vibe that
Yeah.
they say track, so it's some sort of like low jack thing going on. So I can appreciate that they want to get to Jersey, ditch the car, and do whatever. But here's the thing. With their reckless driving, I don't mind them swerving all over the road. The point that pisses me off in terms of how contrived all this is together is that they have to pry open the briefcase right there and then in the car. The diamonds go everywhere, including around the driver's feet. And then the woman in the passenger seat's just like, oh, let me pick him up, and pins the guy's foot down onto the gas pedal. And all of that combined, I'm like, I get it. Criminals aren't the brightest group in a general sense, but that seems exclusively too stupid to do anything right.
And of course, when this happens, they drive straight in to the barrels in the back of one of the trucks, and it ignites heavily. We get a big fireball effect going down the tunnel, up through some of the top
Very nice
bits.
effect. Very nice.
Yeah, the effects are pretty solid for the most part. There is like one kind of dodgy. Like, every time they cut back to like the Manhattan side of the tunnel, when it's like debris and all that, and you can see kind of the river like in the sort of upper part of the screen, there's like boats going backwards and forwards. You can very much tell that they've sort of imposed that on to like a, maybe this is like a set they're actually filming in, and they've just imposed the river in the top half of the screen.
Right.
So because obviously they're not going to put real rubble all over the entrance to the tunnel in Manhattan. So,
I mean, even a plot point in the movie is, this is going to hold up traffic for too long. We need to pull in a bunch of machines. Like we can't stop the Hudson Tunnel from being closed.
Ah, dear. Although the final line of the movie is, let's take the bridge. I'm like, go take the bridge, you assholes. Like, there's bridges.
Oh yeah, there's tons of ways to get across, but this is the most convenient.
Oh dear. So yeah, I mean that's what starts everything off. Like you said earlier, there's like a bunch of introductions for the kid. I actually thought it wasn't going to show us Stallone until after the disaster hit, because it went a long time with no Stallone, and I thought, oh, they're going to wait until the things happened, and he's going to come swooping in like a badass at that point.
Yeah, he's going to be the Tommy Lee Jones from Volcano. He's just like, clearly they showed him beforehand, but he's just that's going to be his character. He just swoops in. It's just like, I'm here to solve the emergency.
Instead, he's the retired version of that. They took his badge and gun, but he's going to solve it anyway. That's character in this.
I thought he was a cop for way longer than I probably should have, given context clues, because they kept on saying like, oh, well, I feel like you're the chief now in this situation. And he's talking about how he was fired unceremoniously. It's only once we get to people saying that it was a medical thing that I'm like, so they took away your badge and first aid kit? What's being fired as the chief mean here?
It was chief for emergencies, I think, emergency services. So I think it's more of like the umbrella that has everything else underneath it kind of thing.
Okay.
Or something. I don't know how it works, but that was the vibe. It's like,
it says emergency medical services, so it was just medical.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so the reason why he ends up being important, because obviously he's a cab driver at the start and whatever, and we get like a quick scene with most of the other people. I think the family gets the most, in the sense that we get a few scenes with them, and it establishes a couple things. It establishes that they're on a trip. The daughter's been a bit of a angsty teenager, but she's kind of in the right to an extent, because the dad apparently had been caught having an affair. But this is him trying to like sort of like recommit to the family, so she's making little snidey comments about someone named Linda or something like that. Yeah. So sets up that stuff.
Honest to God, out of all the characters here, this is the only one that I felt had any sort of meaningful depth. Like, there was a whole backstory presented for these characters of, shattered family.
Did you say death or depth?
Depth.
Yeah, because I was going to say, all three of these characters make it. We talk about.
Oh yeah, no. They had this meaningful depth to them, because if you start looking at the other characters, like the older couple, the prisoners, even Maddie, all of them are pretty one note for the most part. Like, yes, you get a little bit of like, here's what this character's quirks are, or here's something that's special about them. But this is the only one where I felt like there was any sort of inter-character relationships going on, like that actually matter.
It feels like the characters, at least the dad and the daughter, I feel like they both change by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
It feels like they're bonded by the end, and he's, because obviously when Stallone first comes in, he's a complete prick about it, and questions everything he says, But by the end, he's the one trying to save Stallone as much as he can before he has to give up, kind of thing. So we'll get into all that. But so it does all this stuff. And Stallone's not in the tunnel when all this happens. He's just next to it. He's at the entrance. He's about to go in, and then the explosion happens. And he jumps out and immediately starts like helping people and like, okay, press down on this. Let's get him out of this car. Blah blah blah. It's all very. And apparently, he was traveling with 2 doctors because they also jump out and start like doing medical stuff, and they seem to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But he ends up storming to like the control center, whatever this is, where they've got all the camera screens and stuff. And we find out between this scene and that scene is that in 1994, 2 years prior to this, he and his job role, they would run simulations, and they specifically did a simulation of a terror attack on this tunnel and what would happen in various scenarios. And when he hears what they're trying to do, he's like, no, we ran a simulation on this. This will just kill everyone inside. It'll collapse whatever, it'll do this, it'll suck out all the oxygen.
They won't have, no airflow. They're going to basically suffocate.
Yeah, you can't do this, right? And no one really wants to listen to him, but he just knows his stuff. And before he even goes to the office, actually, he goes to speak to the head of this service who's like doing stuff at one part of the tunnel on the other side, like on the, I can't remember if we're in the north or south, but the other side.
Yeah.
Whatever the other one was. And this is where we get the guy from Aliens who's now got his job and he's trying to like climb through. And he's all kind of cocky and doesn't want to listen to Stallone. He refuses to listen to him. And of course, he climbs in a hole and immediately dies because of it.
I was debating between the line I used at the beginning and then his line he says here. It was a bit too long to be snappy, but it's something along the lines of like, someone says like, hey, that whole area is about to collapse. We can't do it. And he's like, the only people who say can't are immediately shut up by the people who do it. And then he just jumps in the hole and like 10 seconds, not even, just boom, dead. Yep. And it's like, all right, well, comeuppance, I guess, for being a dick to Stallone.
Yep. So they get like this model out and they're talking about what to do and like, okay. And obviously there's a really important plot point here because Stallone looks at this old model because it's from like the 30s or something. He's like, wait, what's this bit? He's like, oh, this is where like the people who were working and building the tunnel back when it was being made, this is where they would live for long stretches. There was bunk beds, a little chapel, and like it was like a little living area, but it was sealed off in the 70s when they did some remodeling or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's important for later. I bet we're going to see that.
Absolutely. Honestly, I thought that was like the main plan, and yet it doesn't come up until significantly later into the movie.
Yeah, it's like he forgets it exists until he has like a eureka moment at one point when he's looking for options and he's like, oh, wait a minute, that secret like compartment area.
Well, golly gee, why didn't I think of this earlier? Sorry, George. Anyway, just to real quick go over a couple of the characters who don't get a lot of time here.
Sure.
We do have George, who, like you said, is the main cop guy. Before Stallone shows up, he basically is the one who tries to take charge and keep everyone calm and like goes around. And it's worth noting that our cast of characters here is all of them. Like, there are a bunch of other dead bodies in this tunnel, but this is all of the survivors.
Yes, everyone who survived is basically the cast that we've listed out. In fact, actually, when Stallone's at the office, when he walks in is when he sees something like most of the cameras are dead, but one kind of flickers on and we can see George because we've got a little bit of an exciting action scene going on in the tunnel when this is all going down. So Madeline, right, our playwright character, she like sort of comes to and she gets out of her car and just in front of her is the prison bus that's been turned over. And of course, we did get a little intro to the prison characters to a point. Nothing too much, to be honest, but
yeah, it's just 4 of them. They listed off like 2 of their crimes. One was selling cloned cell phones and the other was an armed robbery, and then there's just 2 others hanging out in the back.
Would they typically transport a female prisoner with a bunch of male prisoners? Obviously they put them in different prisons, but I'm thinking they might still share the bus sometimes. I'm not sure.
We're cutting costs, man. We're cutting costs.
We're not getting a whole bus for one female prisoner. Just put her in with the men.
Absolutely.
So basically, and I actually kind of like this setup because Madeline like sees they're in trouble and they can't get out of the van because they're locked in there. They're prisoners, and they're begging for help. And I kind of like this quandary that it kind of places. It never says it out loud, but this idea, she's like, well, they are trapped. The right thing to do is let them out. But if I let them out, this is like multiple prisoners, and who knows what they were arrested for? They could be murderers, and I'm letting them out into a situation where I'm here alone with just them. Like, I thought a little bit of the hesitation to help them was a nice idea here. I don't know if they completely executed it the way that I would have liked to really sell that, but like, I do think there were some interesting things at play there.
I mean, when you spell it out like that, I agree, but that's also not what I got on my initial view through. Based off of everything we see from Madeline, it struck me much more as how, because obviously there's this big dangling electrical wire above head, and like they have to escape before it like explodes the bus or whatever. But the big thing for Madeline's character is that she is very not self-confident. She's always doubting herself and all that. And I feel like this entire sequence here is less about her questioning whether or not she should save criminals and more so of, I can't do this. I'm just Madeline. I'm incapable of doing this.
I agree. I think that's more what the scene tries to sell, but I think there was a lot to explore there, where it would have even made sense if one of the prisoners was smart enough to realize, oh, she's scared of being alone with 4 prisoners. Maybe I should try and reassure her that, hey, we just want to survive. Like, we're not like, or maybe even just like say, hey, this is what we get arrested for. It's not anything too serious. I sell phones. That's it. That's all I do. Is this, I'm not dangerous.
We're going to the non-violent prison. I mean, obviously not, because one of them did commit armed robbery, but regardless, no. I appreciate the sequence for what it is, but I do think that it's one of those things where they were so focused on getting the set piece of this electrical wire and like the leaking gasoline and all that, that the story just fell by the wayside.
Well, I enjoyed the silliness of this because I started laughing at how this dangling electrical cable, it's a big thick cable as well, it's not just some little wire, it's like a big thick thing with multiple cables in it, there's big sparks coming off the end of it. But it's quite far away when she goes in to the turned over bus.
Yeah.
And she goes looking for the keys, she opens the gate, and like 2 of the prisoners jump out. And we get to a point where there's like one prisoner who's too scared to get up. He's like too terrified. He doesn't want to move. And she has to actually kind of like give him a pep talk. And she even goes in the back and she's like, hey, don't you think me and the prisoner girl or the prison girl, don't you think we're both pretty? And I'm like, where are you going with this? And he's like, yeah, I guess. And she's like, well, wouldn't you rather be out there with 2 pretty girls than being in here? And I'm like, okay, that's the tactic you're taking. Very good.
I mean, it doesn't work, which I'm going to give the movie credit for because it's a stupid tactic to begin with. But
yeah, I think my response to people like that, what are you suggesting? We go out and have a menage a trois while we're stuck in a tunnel? Yeah. Don't be stupid.
Look, you don't want to die a virgin, do you?
I don't think that would have given him much confidence.
No, probably not. No.
But what I loved about this is that this cable, for no reason, just seems to now suddenly be right outside the window that they're leaving through at the front.
Oh, yeah. It's like an alien jump scare. Like it just immediately pops down right in front and just dangles around.
It's so stupid to me just because, like, you could easily do this in a way where it doesn't feel random and it feels justified. All you have to do is, throughout the scene, almost like a ticking time clock, show that the cable is gradually falling down by showing like the little, braces or whatever it is that's holding it up. Like show like one snapping, so it falls a bit lower, and because it's fallen to the side, it's getting closer and closer. You could literally show it as if it's like a timer going down. Even just show it once or twice so that when it happens, it doesn't feel random. Instead, it just feels like it's teleported all of a sudden, and now they can't, like, the last 2 people can't get out of the truck because it's dangling there. To the point where Madeline gets her shoes off because they've got rubber feet and starts, like, holding the cable with her shoes.
All right. I get it. Like, I understand from the movie standpoint of like, oh, we want to show that she's resourceful and we want to show that she is actually capable of dealing with stuff herself. I understand what you're doing, movie. But the way that you got here is she literally is talking to herself as this cable's like 2 feet away from her face, saying like, when there's lightning, you get back in the car because the car has rubber tires and rubber insulates electricity. Right. And then she takes off her shoes. I'm like, you don't have to walk through the process. Yeah, you can just do it. You can just, we'll get it. We'll understand what you're going for. And if she just starts taking off her shoes and the other prisoner goes, what are you doing? And then she can explain. But having her mentally walk through it herself makes her feel like a crazy person.
Yeah, just having the prisoner say what you're doing and have her go, rubber. Like that would have been it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need. But there's a whole tense thing here where George has came up by this point and he's yelling into the camera, cut the power, cut the power. And Stallone realizes, he's saying cut the power. If you don't cut the power, that woman's dead. But
if we cut the power, the fans will go off. And then Stallone's like, no, they won't. That's a totally different system. Cut the damn power.
Yeah, so they cut the power, and that about does it. Yeah, I've got a lot to say about these fans. There's a lot to talk about with these fans because we're about to get to there. Because Stallone's looking at all this, the model, they're thinking of ideas, and eventually saying, I'll go in, and he's like, how do you get in? There's no way to get in. It's it's caved in at either side, blah blah blah. And he's like, here, and he flips open a little bit in the building part of the model, and there's the big fans there. It's like, oh, he's going to go through the ventilation fans, and they set up so much convoluted reasoning for the rules of this, right? Because we have to be able to have Stallone get in, but they can't have them come back out through this way. So they say, hey, we can't shut off these fans for longer than 2 minutes. It's a safety feature to ensure that the tunnel is still ventilated. So, because of that, they're going to turn on, after a minute, the first one will turn on, and then after that, each of the subsequent fans, because they're kind of layered, right? They'll each turn on 15 seconds later a piece, right? I was like, okay, that feels weird. It's especially since, like, before, like, the worry was, like, it was like, oh, well, if I turn off the power, it'll turn off the fans. Well, not only is it a different system, apparently, even if you turn them off, the fans will say F you and just turn back on anyway, because that's what they establish in this scene.
Honestly, I don't mind that because the movie does at least try to give the explanation of like, oh yeah, like everyone down in that tunnel could theoretically die if we turn off the ventilation. Fine, whatever. I'm willing to accept that. My problem is the fact that these fans were built for somebody who was planning on having an action scene because they've got a little countdown timer.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up.
Each and every fan, not the one at the top where we just say, oh yeah, it's 2 minutes, whatever. No, every single one, Stallone's able to look over and say, I've only got 5 seconds to get through this fan before I get to the next one.
Here's my thinking as I was watching this scene, right? First of all, Sylvester Stallone is dressed as Chris Redfield from Resident Evil now because he's got a green vest on, and I thought that was amazing. But, so he's jumping down, and like you say, I was thinking, this is stupid. Why is there a panel with a countdown timer in between every single one of these fans if no one's ever supposed to be down here? But then I thought, no, that's stupid. Of course people would have to be down here occasionally for maintenance. But then I thought, but they can't turn them off.
Right.
So how do they turn them off so someone can do maintenance? None of this adds up. There's a lot of, like, these fans turn on in 1972 and they've just not been turned off since? Is that just how this works?
Honestly, probably, which makes it even more confusing, the fact that it's done by computer now. So how did they manage to set up the computer system without any of that?
Oh, dear. The whole thing, and I'm sure there's probably a convoluted way you could explain it. You could say, well, it auto detects the carbon dioxide in the tunnel, and because it's over a certain level, they refuse to turn it off. That's the safety feature. Fine. But it takes so much, and we get this big, long, extended sequence of him trying to squeeze through the fan blades, and he can't do it, so he has to cut off his walkie-talkie, which obviously makes them more vulnerable because he can't contact anyone.
I hated this sequence so goddamn much because it felt so manufactured. Like, we talked before in a lot of these disaster movies of how it feels like the disaster is hunting down a person and like is making their life harder. But this is a totally different problem that some of these disaster movies fall into. And it's just, the characters have to be stupid for a scene to be tense. Like, we see Sylvester Stallone just dancing around the top of these fan blades for 45 seconds until it's about to hit 0. And then he's like, oh, right, yeah, I got to go down to the next one. And he does that 3 separate times. And I know you're saying, he had to cut off his radio or whatever in order to do that. He wouldn't have to cut off his radio if he didn't spend 45 goddamn seconds dancing around the top one. It just pissed me off, the fact that he spent so long just like, I'll talk on the radio to this woman down there instead of just going. And
for the record, they don't actually stop either. They say they're going to stop, but they actually just kind of slow down a bit.
Yeah. Apparently it's a thing of like, it's on its own momentum or whatever. And I kind of get that, but I also think if it's on its own momentum, it ain't going to stop enough for him to get in 45 seconds.
Yeah, if anything, it should have slowed down more once he started interfering with it, if that makes sense, because he's he's blocking the flow. And then a whole big thing where he has to like dangle the cable on at the last second, and he falls and just barely survives. It's a whole thing. I think to me when I was watching this, I'm like, okay, this is obviously a set, which of course it is, but all I could think was this is not based on a real part of this tunnel. Like obviously the real tunnels will have ventilation systems, but I guarantee you it's not this big cinematic like series of fans that are all like what would you say, this is like 20-foot wide, these fans, something like that?
Oh, absolutely. He's able to, like, as he's dangling from the rope, he's able to run around the edge like pretty much without problem as he makes his way down, so it's at least twice his body size. And
not only that, like I'm pretty sure like an actual ventilation system for tunnels like this, it won't just be one big ventilation bit. I'm sure there's probably lots of little things sprinkled throughout said tunnel, perhaps.
You know what it is it's the puzzle sequences from like a Resident Evil game where you go down into the basement and there's a whole bunch of randomly moving things that make no sense to be down in a basement, but they're here and we're gonna make a scene out of it.
Yeah, but they're fun at least, and two, they do kind of give a lower reason for that if you play the games properly.
All right, fine. Well, all I can picture is I remember like one of the very early live streams I tuned in for you. You were playing the Resident Evil game and you were trying to figure out like a red, green, blue puzzle. And I was like, why the hell are we here? Where's the zombies? What the hell's going on?
Because the guy who wanted the house to be built was a bit of a crazy man and wanted insane booby traps everywhere.
Then the person who built New York wanted action scenes filmed in all of these locations.
I like the idea that one architect's responsible for the entirety of New York. It's not like it was piecemeal by lots of different people. Nope. No. It's
John York. That's who did it.
But you can just call it York City because there's already a York, so you have to call it New York.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Yes, and Jim Jersey on the other side of the river.
John York and Jim Jersey. Coming soon to NBC.
Oh dear. All right, so he gets in, right, and they're all happy to see him. They think he's the first of many of a rescue party, and they're all disappointed when they realize it's just him. They're like, shit. What the hell?
They can't even. He was just being. They specifically said the vents when they get back up to power are hitting him with like 160 mile per hour winds or something like that. And they don't give him a second. Like he comes up out of the vent and he's like clearly dazed, confused, partially deaf, and they're just like, where's the rest of the team? Oh, we're all gonna die. And he's just like, guys, give me a minute here, Jesus.
Yeah, no, they're all yelling at him. He clearly can't hear a lot of what they're saying at this point, and there's kind of a lot of this movie from this point on where it's them doubting if he's like useful enough, good enough, or even able. And quite quickly, when he mentions his name, like the wife of the family's like, wait a minute, I read about you in the paper. You got fired. You got people killed. And it starts hinting at his backstory, which sets up the idea there's a bit of a redemptive thing to this movie. And also the idea that maybe he's like, I won't say he's suicidal, but this idea that he's willing to go down and like get himself killed to save everyone else.
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I'm just hitting bugs out there. Don't make me.
So also leading up to this point, we had Viggo Mortensen's character.
Oh, of course. Yes, we have to talk about Viggo.
He has, this big CEO guy. He's running his company, and he gets stuck down in the tunnel. And immediately, like, as George is coming up to check on him, he's already like out of the car. He's like, "Oh, hey, I see you wearing my shoes."
This is pre-Stallone getting in. He just goes to the back of his car and pulls out climbing gear that he's got there.
Yep. And he just slaps it on, and he's like, he specifically is viewing this entire thing as a PR stunt. Like he is 100% cashing in because he gets the little girl who's got a old VHS camera, and he performs his own Independence Day speech where he's like, just, all right, square it up on me right here, just like right here. Okay, cool. We're going to get you out of here. And then he tells her like, all right, make sure that tape gets up to the surface because I'm going to need it.
Yeah. In fact, he even gets a phone signal when he's climbing up the sort of dodgy area that he's in between the two tunnels. And Stallone specifically said, don't go in there. So when he gets down there and he's already in there, he's like, hey, I told no one to go in there. So he crawls in as well and he starts yelling up to, but before he gets to him, though, Viggo's on a phone and I'm like, I'm not convinced you'd get a reception in here, but let's just go with it, right?
I'm okay with him being on the phone. The part that gets me is that he didn't call anybody of use. He calls up his assistant and is just like, look, we're gonna have to cancel Tuesday's thing. It's a whole thing down here.
Yeah, but this will be a PR win. There's some footage of me making a speech down there. We've we're going to do great here. I'm going to save all these people. I'm going to be a hero. And of course Stallone says that this shaft's unstable, this is a bad idea, and he's like, oh no, I've got instincts, you stay down there with them, I'm going to save everyone. And like, again, just like the chief of the emergency services, 10 seconds after Stallone shrugs and goes, all right, well, I hope you make it, and starts making his way back, 10 seconds later, all this debris at the top starts falling down. And they give him this almost... It is a silly death, because he basically realizes it's happening, he starts sort of like rappelling down as quickly as he can. He gets to the bottom, realizes he can't make it out in time, and he just sort of looks up with a kind of a like, oh, well, I've made a huge mistake, and just gets crushed by all the stuff falling down.
His last thought was, I really hope they got that good angle on that VHS tape.
Well, it's going to be very ironic now. I mean, I don't even know if they'd make it out with the camera, because it probably, even if they did, it's probably damaged from all the water that they had to swim through.
Oh, absolutely. That thing's gone.
It's just dead. So, yeah, so there's that. There's a whole thing when they're back in the tunnel where it starts, water starts kind of coming in through one end of it, and they're like, shit, this is a big problem. Stallone's whole plan here is to actually use explosives that he's got on him, which obviously he brought in thinking he'd have to do this on his vest. He's like, oh, we're going to have to try and like seal that end of the tunnel a bit closer to us to sort of keep the water out and keep us alive for longer. And they think this is a crazy idea. They all start yelling, and he's like, well, if anyone else has got a better idea, I'm open to hearing it, but this is the plan. So everyone's kind of against him for the most part, except maybe, Madeline's like, well, he did come down here. He didn't have to come down here. He chose to come down here to help us. So maybe we should give him a little bit of a benefit kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, just tiniest little sequence, because it doesn't matter at all, is when all the debris came down and Stallone had to like dive out of the little crawl space that he went into, one of the prisoners gets some rebar to the heart and is killed. Right. Yeah, it's played for a tender moment, but then they just immediately forget about it.
Yeah, because they do a whole thing where he doesn't want to let Stallone to go in after Viggo, so he like grabs him, and then the cop has to grab him to sort of make him let go. And I thought, okay, they're setting up a sort of antagonist here that's going to be potentially a problem. And maybe it'll be heartwarming when he ends up being on Stallone's side later, but no, he dies like a minute later. So that's fine. Yeah. He's gone.
He's the irredeemable antagonist, whereas the dad is the redeemable one.
Yeah. Because Stallone kind of proves that he knows what he's doing, because this explosion thing does work. Obviously, there's a bit of a sequence out of it where he's gone up to set the explosives, he takes Madeline for help, and then his cable, and this was one of these bullshit, like, of course it is moments, because I'm fine with problems cropping up, but his cable on his explosive device, because it's kind of like it looks like a gun that's got a cable coming out of it, right? And it's sort of like a coil, and just halfway through as they're walking away, the idea, of course, is to get far enough away and then pull the trigger effectively, and it would, set off the explosive. Is that just in the middle of the coil, it's just got like a big knot, and it just can't go any further. And I'm like, how is the middle of it got a knot? It was a coiled bit of cable. There's no... It's not like it got caught in something entangled and stuff. Like, it was just in the... Like, this felt so forced just to have a bit of danger for this scene, so they have to dive away from the explosion.
I just fully expected him to pull a little bit more, and there's just a little post-it note there from, like, the original chief guy who died. It's just like, screw you, man. So, it's successful, though. So a bunch of, concrete and dirt and whatever come down, and it seals off that end of the thing. But the thing that they were on top of was a circular tanker truck.
Yes.
And once this explosion goes off, the circular tanker comes off of the truck, and we get Prometheus 2, where he's just running in a straight line away from this rolling tanker that's coming towards him, only diving out of the way at the very end, when honestly there were already two cars there. He probably could have just gone in between those and everything would have been fine.
Like, at the very least, to compare it to Prometheus, this is relatively a wider thing.
True.
I mean,
Very
it may
true.
not actually be if you actually compared it to the ship, but like it felt wider in the scene at the very least.
It's long tube, not donut shaped.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, but
sure.
I'm saying the ship though might be so thick that it actually is wider than this tanker, even
Probably.
but it felt wider in the context of the scene at the very least. Meanwhile, though, our cop George, who got a message from Stallone because the lady that likes George told him, "Hey, tell him I want my bracelet back," but it was maybe like a nice thing, like, "Oh, he'll know what that means. That means I want to see him again," kind of thing.
It's that survive sort of thing.
So George comes back from the Manhattan end with some news, right? That they're trying to drill in or something. Because we see this, there's a couple of quick scenes on the outside about how they're basically just assuming everyone's dead and they don't care if this kills everyone. So they're just going to start digging because traffic's an issue. Like, yeah, but it's going to take a while to get the tunnel back to operational status again anyway. It's not going to save that much time to start drilling now, but whatever.
Well, they explicitly say these people, they calculated out they only have 3 hours worth of air. And then also that the river, because all the water's coming in here, they think the river's completely like flooded them by this point as well. So they do have good reasons to assume that everyone inside is dead, but they also are very much aware that if they're wrong, they are signing the death warrant here, because once they start drilling, there's yada yada pressure change and the whole tunnel will just end up collapsing.
So George was up checking the Manhattan end of the tunnel, and he comes back saying, "Hey, they're drilling, great." And this is where we get my favorite moment of the whole movie, which is a ridiculous scene where he's standing yelling, "Oh, like they're coming in through the other end, they're going to get us out," and he's all happy about it. And we get what I can only describe is a very, very quiet slasher movie-esque reveal of a truck behind him that goes up almost vertical on its front end to come down on top of it. It's basically, I think what they're going for is that the bit of concrete that it's on is like angling up till the point where it's almost vertical, and then the truck's going to slide on him. But because he doesn't hear it, and it's not until the last second where he becomes aware of it and he turns around and screams, it's hilarious.
Throws up his hands. It's so... God, it is such a comedic beat.
It's so funny. And that's why it's even like, what makes it more hilarious is they play this as if everyone kind of works together finally to save him, because he's pinned under the truck, right? The truck's kind of on like his chest, shoulder, kind of his head sticking out, but the water's starting to fill up this part of the tunnel. So it's like, oh, he's going to drown soon. So Stallone can't like get him out. So he grabs a bit of like tube or pipe from the car engine. He's like, hey, use this to breathe. So he puts that in his mouth and he's like, yeah, hold that up. And he's trying to get him out. And the big kind of like win in the middle of the movie is that all of the characters have now come after a minute or so of this, and it's like, oh, the prisoners, the family, the dad, they're all going to help lift up this truck to get him out, and like, you know, the wife and daughter are sort of going to pull him out when the truck's up, and it's a big, you know, the music swells, and it's like, oh, they're all working together, like they're not just running away for themselves. It's just kind of heartwarming, and it's like all very nice, and they even get like a big plank of wood out of the back of the truck that crushed them, and that acts like a stretcher, and they tie him down with belts. And it's like, hey, we did something good. We saved a life. It's all very good. Of course.
I mean, they literally say multiple times after this point now, because Stallone pumps them up as they're carrying him out. They're just like, we can do it together. We can do anything. And they repeat that over and over. So this is clearly like the galvanizing thing that gets them all working as a unit.
So the fact that he's just left for dead like 10 minutes later is a, like, and I get it, because ultimately the way out is going to involve swimming through water, and it's like, how do you carry someone on a stretcher underwater, right? It's just not, like, you can ask him to hold his breath, but like, are you going to swim quick enough if you're helping carry a stretcher? I don't know if you are.
Yeah, nah, it ain't gonna work.
So, I mean, like, I don't hate what they do with it in the sense that Stallone comes up to talk to him, and the guy's like, okay, you have to leave me, I get it, you can't take me. And Stallone doesn't want to accept it. He's like, no, we'll figure it away. And the George is kind of a hero by saying like, no, you can't take me, it's not going to work, go without me, I'm giving you, you know, that permission. And Stallone actually makes it easier for the others by saying he's already dead. Like when he comes up afterwards, when they're already on their way to where this like exit is, he's like, oh no, he didn't make it. And I took that as like oh, that'll make it easier for them to keep, because otherwise they're going to like say no, they're going to want to turn back. He's taking that choice away so they don't like doubt themselves into death, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, that's not terrible. But obviously they're going to this, workers area where they lived when they were building the tunnel. That's where it comes up.
Yeah. So interstitial here, between the unpinning him and getting to the workers area is where we get a lot of
Yelling?
Well, no, yes, yelling, but also the inter-character stuff. Like, we see characters from these different groups are starting to talk to each other. They're starting to interact.
Also, I think this is where the dad in the family, like, starts to feel like he's more of a good guy because he's helping and he's being helpful and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom starts...
The mom's freaking out.
She starts to feel like she's the villain of the couple now, and she's like, oh, yeah, you don't want to leave your family, but you're very good at that, aren't you? And then she's like yelling about Stallone being shit, to the point where even her daughter's like, I'm sorry for what my mom said, but can you save us, please? Please, can you save us? Like, and she kind of becomes this villainous character almost, just via whining more than anything.
Can I just say my favorite interaction, though, between these characters, as everyone's like cross-talking, is the young teenage daughter starts talking to one of the juvenile prisoners, and the prisoner's like, so maybe when we're out of this, I can call you sometime. And I'm just expecting it to like whip pan over to the dad, and he's like, the hell you will.
You're wearing an orange jumpsuit, Sonny Jim. That's not happening.
Yeah, in 5 to 10 years. Yeah, criminal. No, it doesn't do that, but I was hoping for it.
Nah. So yeah, they have to swim through this, like, completely submerged area to get to this area. It's got like a chapel in it. And they get there. The big dramatic thing, though, once they do get there, though, is that the older couple, the woman's like, oh, wait a minute, where's Poochie? Well, I don't know what the dog's name was. Was it Cooper? There you go.
Cooper.
Where's Cooper? Where's the dog? That was our son's dog. They had a son that died on like a...
Yeah, it's part of that interstitial bit.
Yeah. But regardless, it's like, no, that was our son's dog. We can't lose the son. And she wants to walk into the water and get him. And the husband's like, no, you can't. And then all these rats start coming in from the water and freaking everyone out.
So, yes, I want to talk about the rat thing because it does lead to a bunch of stuff. But
yes,
the old people's plot, this is the part where it feels like someone was just rolling dice. So, if we consider the old people as the couple and then the dog is included in that.
Yes.
The old couple makes their way through the water thing. Theoretically, nobody dies during the water transfer scene where they all swim underwater. But Cooper doesn't make it. And the husband is all upset that the leash broke and whatever. And the wife and husband say, like, oh, we have to be strong together. The husband's like trying to keep the wife together. We have to move past our son's death together. We can do it. We're still here. And then the wife just dies. Like, broken heart death. Like, she just immediately is gone.
Which happens after the rats show up. That's why I didn't say it yet.
But I'm just saying, she doesn't tie into the rat stuff at all.
No, I know it doesn't.
They cut over to her, they look at her, and he's just like, oh, she's dead.
No, I know it doesn't, but the rats come in, they all start climbing up to the bits of the side to get away from them, and then all of a sudden, like, she's just dead, because they're going to leave to go to the next area, and like Stallone has to like talk to him, be like, hey, you can't, we have to go. She wouldn't want you to die too, old man. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving her. And it's actually one of the prisoners who comes over and says, screw that, you're coming with us, old man, and sort of grabs him and forces him. And it's kind of like a sweet moment, because it's like, oh, he's doing it for obviously nice reasons. Notably, it's the prisoner who was scared to leave the bus earlier on, so I think they were going for like a he's passing it on kind of thing, where he's like doing it for him now. Which is fair enough.
Stallone is the one who says, the old man says he's staying, and so Stallone, with his survivor's guilt, like, well, then I'm staying too. I'm going to stay here. I'm not leaving anyone behind.
I'm going to guilt you into it.
We also skipped it during that interstitial bit is where we got the full backstory of what happened to Stallone.
Oh, I mean, I don't even have much. Honestly, I don't even think I got all of it because Stallone was mumbling his way through that scene and I didn't have subtitles turned on. But it sounds like...
I had subtitles turned on and I still didn't get it.
It sounds like there was a fire in a building. They were told to not go in, to just assume that the people in there were already dead, and Stallone said F that, took in a couple of firefighters or whatever, and on the way out, a couple of these firefighters died, and he was blamed for doing that. So that's what the backstory was. I think that's what the gist of it was anyway. Yeah,
I mean, for the most of it. And one of them was the brother of the guy who, like, was a co-worker of Stallone, and the co-worker sold him out in front of the media and all that, so...
Yeah, it was a whole Dan Hedaya's character was the brother.
Yep. So all that happened, and that's where we get more of his, like, I'm not going to leave anybody else behind. I'm I'm not going to let anyone die if they don't have to, sort of thing for his character.
Yeah. So, which makes it really weird that the old women, and when I say we're calling them old, but they're not that old. Like they're in their 60s, right?
Yeah, 60s for sure.
Right. But this woman just literally dies while she's sitting there, to the point where someone goes over to move her, and oh, wait, she's dead. I thought she was just like taking a nap or something. Like she's just dead. Oh,
yeah, the entire older couple plot, it just felt like no direction at all.
However, when they get to the next area and they're climbing up this walkway and they're pushing everyone up, we hear some barking. The dog! Poochie made it, because Poochie comes in swimming in the water, and the old man's like, oh, the dog! So Stallone sort of goes down and grabs the dog and pulls the dog up, and the dog runs up the stairs. But then that's when all these wooden stairs that are built up to this like exit all collapse, and Stallone falls into the water. He's got no way to get back up, and he's yelling, "Go! Just leave me!" He's got that guilt. He's got that guilt. He's like, "Hey, if you all make it, I've done my job. I can live with this." He isn't said out loud. I'm just kind of getting the gist of what he was.
I mean, he specifically can't live with this. He'll die with that.
But like. And it's notably the dad of the family, who was obviously really against him earlier on, who pulls off his shirt and says, no, like, put that down as like a sort of rope or whatever. Let's try and pull him up. Like, he doesn't want to leave him behind. Yep. And Stallone's yelling, go, go, go. But when Madeline's trying to hold this down to pull him up, more of the bridge collapses and she falls in the water. And Stallone's yelling, go, just go. Whereas Madeline's yelling, no, don't leave us. Don't leave us. I don't want to die down here.
All right. So there's like 2 or 3 things I want to bring up here.
Yes.
First is the dangling of this coat, because I love they do a wide shot to show just how far away they are. And this coat gives them an extra like 2-3 feet. Meanwhile, it's 20-something feet down to Stallone, and they're not even close. Like, he is so far away. The fact they're even trying to just dangle this coat feels pathetic. The second thing that I want to bring up here is going back to Maddie's introduction, way at the beginning of this. She gets a call from some guy who's saying like, hey, I'm gonna leave my wife, I'm so sorry. And I guess she's having an affair with like a married man or something. Do you remember this at all?
I remember her sitting down to start working on Act 2 of her play. I remember her being on the phone. I don't remember what any of the phone call was, though, if I'm honest.
The voicemail coming in was like a dad of some kid was calling in and saying, hey, Maddie, I'm sorry. I swear I'm in the process of leaving her. And then you hear the wife in the background, and apparently it's literally the kid's birthday party as he's making this call. It's such a weird thing. But then we got the sequence where the teenager says, hey, you cheated on mom, like you had this affair or whatever. And for a split second, I was like, is this the same thing? Is this like a thing that was going on there?
I don't think so, but yeah.
No, and it clearly wasn't. But then at the very end here, as Madeline is screaming up, saying like, don't leave us, she is specifically calling out that dad character, specifically saying, Steven, don't leave me, over and over again. And I'm like, this feels like we're going back to that. It feels so personal between them, despite the fact there was never any personal stuff built up in this.
No, for one, they specifically named who he was having an affair with. It wasn't her.
Right. And the other guy said like, hey, it's David. So
yeah. I mean, the big thing here is that he's just the one at the front who was trying to help, and now he feels like he's now the one reluctant, like Stallone, to choose to leave them behind, right? So I felt like, okay, he's had a bit of an arc. He's kind of on the other end of it now, where he doesn't want to leave, but ultimately, even when the others are still arguing about it, he's like, no, we have to go. He's making the smart choice, and they go through this little tunnel that immediately collapses behind them. That's it. The problem here, right? And I'll just to do the end of their stuff. They get to like an exit where the people who work at the control room are like going to their car, and they hear them banging on something, and there's like a sort of like concrete vent like underneath a barrel in the car park of this like area.
Yeah. And they get like a forklift, they rip it off, and everyone's fine.
Yes.
Even Cooper's safe as well. My thing was...
Yeah, but not George, because the woman who's in love with them is like watching, hoping that he's going to come out of the hole, and he never does.
Does anybody else? No one else? Oh God. But no, my thing for this is, all right, this is just a random ass garage, like literally not like even a parking garage, like a mechanic's garage. And we see all the wrenches and stuff on the wall as the people who are desperately trying to find these people end up finding them. That's the little twist of fate that too far for me is that these people, as they're leaving for the day, as they are walking to their car, just happen to pass by this tiny little hole where these people are screaming out of, and they happen to have been the people who were looking for them the entire time. Like, just have it be a random mechanic, you know? It doesn't have to be these people we've been following.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I got the impression this was near the entrance to the tunnel, and that's why it's here, and it's why they're about. It's why their car's parked here. I'm not saying that's enough.
Construction workers, anything.
Like, I'm not saying that's enough.
That
I'm trying to argue what the movies try to say, right? That's what the movie's logic is. I agree. Gotcha. It's far-fetched, but whatever. The big thing for me, though, in this part of the movie is just out of nowhere, Stallone gets an idea of like, oh, if we blow this thing, the water will create a vacuum that'll suck us up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere. So he just gets that idea.
You say out of nowhere, it is slightly foreshadowed. When they are setting up the first explosion, the one that's going to block off the water,
right.
He specifically mentioned saying like, "Oh yeah, there was this thing in Baltimore recently. It was blowback, and it's where they get like sucked straight out because of the explosion or whatever." So they do at least bring it up. But yeah, the fact that he's coming up with it now, it does seem to come like, especially because he just picks up a random like thing of fuse wire, and he's like, "Fuse wire, all right, let's go do this." And I'm like, "Where the hell did you just have this? Where did you get this explosion stuff now? I thought you were out."
Yeah, this is also a part of the movie where a bit of geography that's easy to understand would have been good, because he says, "Oh, we have to go back to where we started," but then like they end up in a like room that looks like it's above where the tunnel is, rather than in the tunnel itself. So I didn't really feel like this is not really back where we started per se. It's just kind of like maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I couldn't tell because nothing visually made it that clear. So just one of those things would have been helpful if they'd done that. But
I feel like it's one of the like back during when they were showing off the model and they were showing like that little side room.
Yeah,
they needed to have like some little specific marker, some like geographic location thing that we can orient ourselves around.
I think
instead of it just being a mess of tunnels.
Obviously, they didn't want the characters on the outside to know that they're still alive, so they couldn't have done this. But it's the sort of thing where having like cutting back to that room and saying this is where they are now and pointing to the model would have been like a good thing throughout the movie if they had they been able to track their progress. But obviously that wouldn't work for what they were doing.
Well, you could have Steven, the dad, like, you know, he's had his arc, he could take charge and come up and say like, "Hey, they were still alive down there when we left them."
Oh, sure.
And then like point out and say like, "This is where they were. We don't know where they are now though."
Actually, that's one of the things that I also think the ending misses out on is that it felt given how much they seemed to actually care about them at the end when they were leaving, it felt a shame not to get their reaction when they found out they're still alive. We never get to see them oh, they're okay, they made it out somehow. Like that felt like it was a missing opportunity kind of moment. Instead the Coast Guard's just waiting right next to where they pop out somehow. That felt a bit coincidental.
I mean, I'd imagine there's a bunch of boats in the harbor, and then they just see a giant geyser of water spouting up, and they're like, well, check that out. That seems like it's weird.
But yes, Stallone's on a stretcher, Madeline's walking, and they just crack a joke about how they're going to take the same ambulance together, but please, this time, can we take the bridge? And that's the joke we end the movie on, as the camera just tilts up to the city of Manhattan and just looks at it all lovingly.
Yep.
And end of movie.
Yeah. Honest to God, I was surprised with how long the credits were. I mean, I know they had a bunch of visual effects and stuff, but like, it's a good, 7-8 minutes of credits.
I mean, that's pretty normal for a blockbuster. I mean, maybe it wasn't as common in the mid-90s, but I mean, it wasn't that long until we were at that point. Like nowadays, for a big blockbuster, you're looking at 10 minutes. Possibly more depending on the movie.
Oh yeah, no, I'm used to the VFX artist just being like, all right, you're able to go to the bathroom, and when you come back, we'll still be on the VFX artist.
Yeah, I mean, it's a watchable movie. Like I'll give it that. There's a couple of memorable moments. There's some silly moments. Some of that mid-90s disaster nostalgia might still be there for you. I certainly had some moments like that for myself, but I think ultimately I'd rank it underneath the two movies we've done already, because it, much like Dante's Peak, doesn't lean into the silly consistently. It tries to take some of itself seriously as the movie goes on, and that can fall a little bit flat. I think the ending, like this is how we're going to get out of this, just feels like a Deus Ex Machina that he thinks of.
Yeah. I
mean, fair enough, he kind of mentioned something that foreshadows it earlier, but it's so like just magic solution that it doesn't feel satisfying.
I agree, but I feel like the Deus Ex is earlier. I feel like it's quite literally they get into this little shanty area, and then when the rats come up, he notices that they're burrowing behind a statue of Jesus Christ. And at that point, I'm like, oh, okay, so you're taking Deus Ex literally, where Jesus is the way. Got it.
To be fair, though, the idea that the rats know where to go so we can follow them, I don't think that's terrible.
No,
like, that kind of works.
I don't think it is either, but the idea that they showed the model, they showed what this area was, to then say, oh, but there's actually a special secret area behind the thing that the model knew, felt very much like, well, this wasn't set up at all. There was nothing to this. If it were just a random cave that had been formed out or something, I could believe that. But like you said, they had a whole stair structure going on there. This should have been something that was very clearly mapped.
And the impression I got, given where it goes and where they pop out, was that this is the entrance to this area when they were building the bridge. Obviously, it's all been built over now. Because he even said it was sealed in the 70s, so I assume this is what they meant. It's just that the model didn't take into account the little extra bit that actually goes up to the surface.
I get that, but also, like, they had to pry off metal stuff off the walls. To me, that's what felt like it was the hidden bit, and everything else was just there. Because all he had to do to get into the first bit was just turn a vault door underwater. He didn't have to like pry anything up.
No, I'm saying the other end of it was sealed in the 70s. Like the exit to the real world. It's just that the model didn't go into like how you get to it. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I'm just going to blame the geography then, because I didn't get the feeling that was the sealed off area.
I'm not saying
the first part was the sealed off
I'm not
area.
saying this forgives it. I'm just thinking through what it is based on what they said on the movie.
Right.
That's all I'm doing.
No, I got you.
I'm not saying it's satisfying. I'm not saying that I felt like I got a good sense of where everything was or that it was properly established. But to me, like, it just kind of felt like they should definitely be dead at the end of the movie, and he just pulls a solution out of his ass, and here we are. Like, they just miraculously survive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I'd agree with that. It's not a movie that feels like it's got this like big idea that it wants to play out. It doesn't feel like, with the other volcano movies, you got the idea that here are problems that are related to volcanoes, and here's how we're going to solve them. Whether it be the lava, whether it be ash, whether it be earthquakes or whatever, here's stuff that's related to it. But when it comes to this one, it just kind of felt like it being in a tunnel doesn't really matter. It's like, it's just a matter of, okay, well, this is, what it reminded me the most of? Poseidon Adventure. It just felt like, here's a drowning movie, and that's all it really is. You just have to escape the water. The fact that they were trapped in a like confined space really didn't matter that much at all.
Well, that's why it matters in a tunnel. That's why there's water around it.
Yeah,
I get it. I mean, if anything, it made me think of Tower and Inferno a little bit, just because they're trapped in a situation. Obviously, it's different because like in that they're trapped because it's in a skyscraper and they can't get down, as opposed to we're trapped in a tunnel and we can't get up. But like just the idea that like there's an explosion, there's fire. I guess it's kind of mixing them because the water starts coming in, but the water doesn't start coming in till like halfway through the movie, so it's
true.
Whereas in Poseidon Adventure, it's like it's immediately a concern. We have to keep running away from the water.
That's another thing that bothered me in this movie, is that the explosion happened and then immediately, and I'm not talking like, oh, we cut away to something else. Like, we see the explosion happening from Sylvester Stallone's perspective. We don't have any time skip. The medics roll up and they already know that this was a toxic waste explosion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who got you that information? Who's telling you this?
Maybe they saw it on the cameras right before it happened. They recognized the trucks. They went, wait a minute, that's that illegal toxic waste operation.
Sure.
Hey, I'm not saying that's convincing. I'm just
they just saw the vat, saw it was going to Jersey, and said, well, that's probably toxic.
Oh dear. Yeah, I don't know if I've got much more to add really. It's kind of a serviceable on a pure dumb entertainment level kind of movie, but it never really goes above. Stallone does obviously have screen presence. Stallone is a star, right? He kind of like stares or yells, and it kind of like brings a scene together a couple of times in this movie, but it never really elevates into good territory by any means, I don't think.
Nah, I was so hopeful because there was the one sequence where Stallone is leaving the tunnel area after trying to talk to his superior, and he's running with this whole like crowd of people, and you just see from a good long angle shot, a woman falls down in front of him and is like about to get trampled, and he just reaches down, helps her back up to her feet, and keeps running. And for me, that's such a strong character beat and visual matched into one of like, he's just willing to help however he can, whenever he can. And it just never quite got back up to that throwaway shot. That was like the peak of his character to me, and it never quite got back there.
Yeah. It also feels like they don't use all the characters they have as effectively as they could. Like,
oh, no.
They have the family, and they do obviously the good growth with the dad and the daughter, which is good. Like, them hugging at the end's like a nice sort of capper to where they started at the start of the movie. But it felt so weird to me that there was never a point where the daughter was in danger, like serious danger, and like they thought they might lose her. Like, it feels weird they never had that moment.
Yeah. I mean, honest to God, I thought for certain that the underwater swimming scene when they were trying to get into that was going to test at least one character. That there was going to be one character who's like shoelace gets stuck or something. But no, it's just everyone's through fine except for Cooper, and he's fine as well.
No, he just shows up later. He's fine.
Yeah.
So very strange. Yeah, I guess we're rating it then. What are you rating Daylight?
I mean, I agree that I dislike this one. Not dislike. I like this one less than Dante's Peak and Volcano. And already Dante's Peak was very middling for me. This one, I don't see any reason to ever really go back to it. As much as you say there's some nostalgia factor, I don't really have that. I don't have that sort of attachment to it. So for me, I think I'm going to break past the halfway point. I'm going to give this one a 4.5.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't really have a lot going for it for me.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. You know, you're saying it's just kind of into bad territory, but it's not a disaster. I mean, it's a disaster movie, but it's not.
Yeah. Like again, a lot of the VFX when the explosions originally go off at the beginning, I thought those looked great. And then same thing, they clearly sunk a lot of money into that final VFX shot of Stallone holding onto Madeline's hand as their torrent of water is going by. Like, it looks good.
And even the sets, like all the sets of the tunnel with filling up with water, the sets of the stupid big fans, as much as they're dumb, like, you know, that's a big set. Like, you know, they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's a 5 out of 10. I think is where I'm coming down on it. I'll give it that midpoint where I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's watchable enough that I wouldn't say it's in the bad category either. But like, I'm never going to recommend it. Really.
Right.
Like, if you want to complete Stallone's filmography, or whatever, then by all means, yeah. Like, you're probably going to see some worse or more boring movies with Stallone in them if you dig deep enough. But
go back to Expendables season.
That's a good question. Like, what Expendables movies is this better than?
Well, I mean, just looking at ratings, which obviously it's not the exact same sort of thing.
Is it better than all of them but two? Is that because that's my instinct? But
it's my ratings going down in order were 5, 6.5, 5, and then 3.5. So this is worse than
of 3 of them for you.
3 of them. For you, you gave a 4.5, a 6.5, a 4, and a 4. So yes, for you it was 2 was the only one that was better.
Okay.
Yep.
Obviously, these are stunning numbers we're talking about here across that board.
Stallone just killing it.
Hey, Stallone's got great movies. We're just not done any of the great ones.
Well, I mean, I'm looking ahead on the schedule, and got something coming up.
Something maybe, there may be a lot more Stallone later this year.
Yep.
Just brace yourselves.
So 2 things I want to bring up just before we leave here. First, well, I guess 0 thing is, I think we can agree, is this cut from the collection?
Yeah, this is cut.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad enough to be like, you know, like,
no,
in the super negative tiers, but yeah, cut from the collection.
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing I wanted to bring up is that trivia says that Stallone wanted this to be his last action film because he felt he was getting up in age. And then he just kept going.
This is over a decade before he even did Rambo 4, never mind, you know, all the Expendables and all sorts. That's funny.
Yep. And then second thing was apparently the director, Rob Cohen, originally did not want Stallone in the leading role and instead wanted Nick Cage, but Universal backed down on that and got Stallone instead. I'm curious what you would think of that movie.
It could be sillier for sure. I don't know. One day Nick Cage season has to happen, but we're not there yet.
That's going to be such a whiplash season. Some of them are just going to be the most boring things you've ever seen, and some of them are going to blow your mind.
Well, it's that episode of Community where it's like, is Nick Cage good or bad? And Abed just can't decide. He basically shuts down because he can't decide good or bad.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah. I think there's different Nick Cage. You could do action Nick Cage where all these action movies. You could do sort of like his directed video. I mean, that's more of an extra reel season movie than as a collector's cut season.
Absolutely.
But
hold on. This was 96. What was he doing in 96? 97 was Face Off. Yeah, and 95 was Las Vegas.
Well, forget Las Vegas, but like 97, 96, 98, that was Con Air, The Rock, and Face Off are all in that kind of period. Like that's peak Nick Cage. And then Gone in 60 Seconds, just a couple of years after that. It's when you get to the mid 2000s, the real bad stuff really starts to creep in. Anyway, So anyway, so this is a big collector's cut. I mean, next time, of course, we're still continuing the 80s disaster season. Different type of disaster though. We're going with Outbreak, which is not one I've seen. So
let me check. Which one is Outbreak? Dustin Hoffman. I think I may have actually seen this one.
Oh, yes. This is Contagion before Contagion. Which is, and Contagion is of course COVID before COVID.
Honestly, that's probably when I watched it. I was probably in that like self-defeating circle, and I was like, I just need to watch a movie where everything ends up okay in the end.
Very good, very good. So yes, that's what's coming next time on the show next week. And of course, check out the other shows, Ace, the sci-fi movie podcast we do, Atomic Cinema Experiment. That's got more of a variety. We don't really do seasons on that as much, but we got RoboCop's coming up on that soon. We recently did The Creator from last year. Not too long ago, we did big new movies like Furiosa and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So if those are of interest, go check them out. And of course, we did all the previous movies in those franchises as well. So go check out all that stuff. But like I said earlier on, you can support the show over in patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and you get bonus content. Me and David do 2 bonus monthly shows on there. We do the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection. And we do extra reels where we review some of the worst movies of all time. Hopefully so bad they're good, but not always the case. So if you're interested in those, but also bonus episodes of the horror movie podcast that I do with Tim, Streams After Midnight, and other little bits and pieces, you can go get that over on Patreon. But mostly it's to help support the show and help make sure that we can keep doing it. So thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. This has been the Collector's Cut. Thank you once again. Keep watching movies. And if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity. If I could do a Stallone voice, I'd have done it in Stallone's voice, but
please don't.
I can't.
No.